আসসালামু আলাইকুম। শুভ সকাল। সবাইকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি আমাদের সিটি ব্যাংকের কানেকশন হল অডিটোরিয়ামে আজকে এবং আগামীকাল 2 দিনের সেশনের জন্য। বেশি কথা না বাড়িয়ে আমরা চলে যেতে চাই সেশনে। আমাদের মাঝখানে যেই ফরেন ট্রেনার আছেন তার সম্পর্কে অলরেডি আমাদের সুলতান স্যার বলে দিয়েছেন। ডক্টর মোহাম্মদ ইস্কান্দার শাহ মোহাম্মদ রশিদ, সিইও ইসরা কনসাল্টিং মালয়েশিয়া। টপিকটা থাকবে কিনোট ডায়ালগ মালয়েশিয়া's ইসলামিক ফাইন্যান্স প্লেব্যাক from legal architecture to VVI and Maqasid. So now requesting Dr. Mohammad Iskandar Shah Mohammad Rashid to come to the dais and deliver the keynote dialogue. Please.
Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone, and also good to be here again after a very good conference that we had yesterday. Alhamdulillah, it's a significant milestone. I want to thank few people before I start my presentation. First of all, obviously to Mr. Afzal for his kind words, and also inviting me to this beautiful headquarters of Citibank. He was saying, sharing some of the success story, and I hope Islamic finance will continue to grow. I think with good leadership and also with the support from the management, I think the agenda to push Islamic banking will become a lot more easier. And also to Dr. Yusuf, he's been too kind. Giving me a lot of compliments, but I think the credit is due to him. He works very hard to be where he is right now. I'm as a professor or lecturer just facilitate, I think, his journey. But the only thing I'm worried is that he said, ask burning questions. Don't burn too much. I think the place will be, then we need to call the firefighters, So this is, as I think you'll probably remember, this I said like yesterday, this is my second trip in Bangladesh. The first time I came in 2019. We had a workshop on Sukuk. Then after that, Alhamdulillah, we saw some Sukuk issuance as well. And today also, I want to speak about Malaysian experience about Sukuk, because every time I come from Malaysia, everybody wants to know what is the success story of Malaysia and everything. So since this is a technical workshop, I probably start with tell you the story how Sukuk actually started in Malaysia. Not many people know this story. Of course, we started in 1992 when first Shell decided to issue what we call as the VVA Sukuk. But the key point that makes Sukuk very successful in Malaysia, when the government of Malaysia decided that we have to make Islamic finance first or Sukuk first. Why we wanted to make Sukuk first? For a very simple reason. It's not even a Shariah reason. It's not even a religious reason. The main reason why we wanted to issue Sukuk first, because if you issue Sukuk, conventional can buy, Islamic can buy. So the market is actually much, much bigger if you go for bond. Right? And what is the implication of it? The implication of it is that many companies, they want to tap into the Sukuk market. So they also want to become a Sukuk issuer for very economical reason, which is, first, you get tax exemptions. Because if you issue Sukuk, your tax is 20%, stamp duty is 20% cheaper as compared to conventional. So the government give a lot of incentive for the people to issue Sukuk. Second, the market is much bigger compared to only issue bond, because if you issue bond, Islamic mutual fund cannot buy, Islamic banks cannot buy, all the Islamic companies cannot buy. But if you issue Sukuk, Islamic can buy, and also conventional can buy. That's the second reason, and also the tax. And the most important thing is that because Malaysia decided that they want to make Islamic finance as the number one for the country. And that cannot happen unless we develop the Sukuk market. Today, Alhamdulillah, because of all the incentive by the Malaysian government, the capital market size of Islamic is about 67%. 67%. And almost 80% of the stocks which are listed in the stock market is also Islamic. Okay? So why this thing is so important and why I'm sharing you all these things is that because the moment you start doing Islamic, you have 2 layers of governance, which is number one, the normal governance. Second thing is basically what we call as the Shariah governance. Alright? And I always tell these people is that the Shariah governance must be superior as compared to normal governance. Which means that if you do Shariah governance, That means the trustworthy, the level of understanding, and the level of transparency has to be greater as compared to only what normal governance. I think this is very important. I think this is the three success factor why Malaysia Sukuk is actually quite successful. And another thing, I think I don't want to repeat this particular simple illustration. I just put this because I just want to make sure that everyone in this room really understand what makes Sukuk different as compared to bond. And we can go into detail, but in a very simple nutshell, the only thing that really matters when it comes to Sukuk is that you need to have an underlying asset, which means that you need to transfer the asset. And for you to transfer the asset, you need to create what we call as an entity called special purpose vehicle. And let me tell you a story about this. And also, this story doesn't really publicly known to many people as well. When Malaysian government wants to issue Sukuk, so we ask them, what is your underlying asset? Of course, not me, people who are senior than me. So this story was told by the guy who actually advised the government. So the government say, oh, we have a piece of land. Correct? We have a piece of land. So what is the value of the land? The value of land is basically about 400 million ringgit. So 400 million ringgit is about 100 million US dollar. Okay, so that is the asset which will be transferred as the underlying asset for the Sukuk. Alright? Then the government said, okay, at maturity, do I get back the asset? Then the people say, oh, okay, if you do proper Sukuk, or you do real Sukuk, or the true Sukuk, or what we call it as the asset-backed Sukuk, you need to buy back at the market value. Okay, the market value can be 1 billion, the market value can be 1.5 billion, the market value with the 2 billion, and so on and so forth. Then the government said, oh, we are not interested, because our cost of funding will be much, much higher. So then we became creative, and then we said, okay, asset-backed Sukuk, which is quite difficult, why don't we do asset-based Sukuk? Okay, what is the difference between asset-backed and also asset-based? So asset-based, you don't really have to transfer the asset, but you only transfer the usual part of the assets, which means the beneficial ownership of the asset. And that was the origination of the first asset-based Sukuk in Malaysia, where the government transfer the beneficial ownership and can buy the asset back at basically at the face value which is predetermined. So some of you might ask, why the government is doing this? Why don't they do a true Sukuk, which is transfer the asset? Because if the government does that, then the cost of funding for the government going to become much higher. And if the government cost of funding is much higher, what will happen is that the government cannot undertake many of the projects which is by the government, because the yield will actually what? Goes up. So this is the origination of what we call as the asset-based Sukuk. Alright? And because as government have issued the asset-based Sukuk for the first time, then what has happened is that after that many more issuance come place, because the yield is actually being created. The benchmark is actually being created. So for those who are not clear about what is Sukuk is about, the only thing that you need to understand is that when it comes to Sukuk, you need to have some form of asset which is need to be transferred. Even you do commodity murabaha, they still buying and selling of an underlying asset. So why asset is so important? Because we want to go away from this creating money out of nothing. And this is also the beauty of Islamic finance. We just do not want to create money out of nothing unless there is an underlying asset which is supporting the performance of the investment. I think this is very important. So, although people are criticizing Malaysia for many reasons, right? Oh, this is not real Sukuk. This is actually not really fully compliant to Shariah because you are only replicating conventional, so on and so forth. I tend to disagree with almost all the statements for very simple reason. Number one, if you do Sukuk, the asset that you have must be Shariah compliance. So what does it mean? It means that by doing Sukuk, you are eliminating all the haram activities. So which means that if you have a gambling building, you cannot do Sukuk. Okay? If you have entertainment building, you cannot do Sukuk. So what does it mean? It means that also by doing Islamic finance, you are eliminating haram activities from the economy. Number one. Number two, if you do Sukuk, you need to have a strong underlying asset. And some of them has to be tangible asset. Some of them can also be intangible asset. So what does it mean? It means that in Islamic finance, the level of leverage is much lower because the underlying asset has a value. That's number 2. Number 3, by doing Islamic finance, you also remove speculation because the asset itself is actually something tangible and also what? Generate cash flow. So this is 3 strong reasons why Sukuk or Islamic finance is actually different as compared to conventional finance. Alright? So you cannot simply argue that, okay, Sukuk, okay, we all want to do asset-backed Sukuk. What is the problem with asset-backed Sukuk? The problem with asset-backed Sukuk is that if you want to transfer assets in Malaysia, it will take at least 6 months. It will take at least 6 months. So if you want to issue Sukuk and it takes 6 months, people will not do it. You get the point I'm trying to make? Right? Of course, the real one who say, I really want to do Islamic, the true Islamic, they will do it. But you and me know, when it comes to business people, what is the first thing that comes to their mind? Convenience or religious? Convenience. Right? ROE. Because if you want to wait 6 months, you'll be out of your job. Am I right or not? Not at all. But if you do asset-based Sukuk, it will only take about 3 weeks for you to complete the whole thing. And it's also not expensive. Okay? It's not expensive. So what I'm trying to say here is that Sukuk is, right now, is not the perfect solution, but it's a transition towards a perfect solution. You see, many people who are critical about Islamic finance, and I'm sure many of you are in this room or even outside this room, they always tell, Islamic finance just similar with conventional. Just similar with conventional. It's not true. It's not true. There are a lot of differences. There are plenty of differences. But yes, we are moving to the next level. What is the next level? Impact, makasih, all these things. But we have to take slowly. We cannot move from one to another. In Malaysia was ruled by British for 400 years. I'm sure Bangladesh was also ruled by British. Same, right? Yeah, same, right? You were in India, Pakistan together, right? The colonial power, right? What the colonial power did to us? What the colonial power did to us? First thing, they destroy all the zakat and wakaf institution. Am I right or not? They destroy. Completely destroy. Alright? And then they replace all these things with the conventional banking. So what does it mean? It means that they have removed the distribution mechanism, but they have actually replaced the distribution mechanism with the compounding mechanism. Can you see the difference or not? Alright? Islam is supposed to be distributing, and accumulation and distributing. But they only do accumulation and accumulation. And that accumulation is actually what? A compounding accumulation. And what has happened? You can see the world today. The inequality is actually at the highest rate. Agree or not? The highest rate. I'm sure you have heard the story. Elon Musk. His salary is $1 trillion US. One person. One person. $1 trillion US. Do you know how much is $1 trillion US? Bangladesh GDP 500 billion. Malaysia GDP 500 billion. So we combine together these two countries. Alright? Equivalent to one man. And this is the power of compounding. And I think Brother Yusuf, he always remember, when I teach in class, I always tell my student the logic and the rationality. You need to think the logic and also the rationality. So if you think the logic and the rationality, this is completely illogical. If one person can actually worth more than 2 countries together. Okay lah, forget Malaysia lah, small country. Pakistan 240 million people, GDP about same as yours, 500 billion. You are about 180 million people, also about 500 billion. Can you imagine? 420 million people, the contribution to the world is equal to one man. Unfortunately, it's a white man. Right? Okay. If it's a Muslim, we can still, no problem. Maybe he will pay zakat, 2.5%. Right? But this is the slot. So, and to be honest with you, the reason why we are so passionate about Islamic finance, I'm not here trying to convert you because you already been converted. That's why you are in this room. But you need to have a strong conviction that, and also passion, that this is the only way to go. Alright? So think about it, right? Today, the world is facing so much debt. America alone, the debt is about 38 trillion US dollars. Okay. America spent $1 trillion every year for interest payment. And debt spending is more than the defense spending. And America is the highest defense spender in the world, but still the debt spending is actually what? More than the defense spending. This is what we call as the inflation point. So how we can actually reduce the amount of debt without compromising the growth of the economy. So this is where the Sukuk comes in and say, okay, this is a semi-equity or semi-debt, or what we call as a quasi-equity and also quasi-debt. It's not a fully debt because there is an underlying asset. There's still, performance has to be, supported by the underlying asset. But at the same time, it's not completely equity because you still get a regular payment and so on and so forth. So Sukuk is one way to reduce the transition from completely a debt-based economy to a bit more of equity economy. Although equity economy is so difficult, it's not easy to do equity economy, by the way. Right? It's not easy to do equity anyway. The risk is much higher and people cannot afford to take that much of risk, especially in a country like us, Malaysia, in the developing countries. But we are still banking centric, but we cannot be completely equity, we cannot be completely banking. So we cannot do completely risk sharing, we also cannot do completely risk transfer. So Sukuk is actually in between of risk transfer and also what? Risk sharing. So this is a journey towards risk sharing. Inshallah, we can go back to the day of risk sharing. People always talk about Prophet Muhammad, the caravan, it's purely based on trust and faith. There was a story was told by one of my colleagues. It's a very interesting story. He said, those days, you remember the Silk Road? The Silk Road, it goes from, China all the way to Bursa, Turkey, right? And it's all equity finance, by the way. It's all equity finance, Mudarabah and also Musharraf. And sometimes in the Silk Road, there's one location, you don't see anything for 2,000 kilometers. It's a long way, of course there's a cave and there's a caravanserai and everything. It's a long journey, right? But what makes you invest in this kind of investment, in this kind of business? What makes you invest? Exactly. It's only trust and faith. Am I right or not? Faith. A lot of people say, oh, this equity will never work, But let me give you another story as well. I have a lot of stories to tell. I'm so sorry. Right? But eventually I'll finish the slide. Okay? Because I want to push for equity financing, because that is my agenda, to push for equity financing. Let me tell you one more story before I move on. I'm sure you heard about Venice. Right? Venice, Italy is the heart of risk sharing. You know why Venice was so successful? Let me tell you why Venice is so successful. Because they have one product called Commander. And what is Commander? Commander, according to Dr. Yusuf Sultan, is actually Mudarabah. Okay? And all of you don't want to do Mudarabah. Alright? Because nowadays in Muslim world, very difficult to trust. Alright? You want to keep the profit, but you want to share losses. Right? When it comes to Islamic finance, this is always the problem. Profit, they keep. Losses, we share. Alright? So what does it mean? That we privatize the profit, we socialize the losses. And this is actually one of the biggest problems with Islamic banking, and that's why nobody wants to trust Islamic banking, and that's why it's very difficult to do risk sharing. But those days, Venice has become the heart of the civilization. And if you study history, why Venice became the heart of civilization? Because young people will migrate to Venice. And why young people will migrate to Venice? Because they will actually work for the capital owner. Profit sharing. Okay? So they will actually do business for the senior people who actually cannot go out because they are already old, but they have the money, they have the capital. They will give it to the young people, do mudarabah, and then these young people will become rich, and then they will actually go to the younger people, they will go to younger people, go to young people. So what does it mean? In order for you to become rich, you need to attract more young people to come to you. Am I right or not? But in our part of the world, all young people, most of them, They study hard because we want to go America. Correct, no?
Yes, ma'am.
We need American passport. If you don't believe me, right? I always go to Pakistan. Okay, Bangladesh only 2 times, so I don't have any empirical evidence.
Similar here also.
Right? But if I go to Pakistan, I don't have. I hope there's no Pakistani here. But any Pakistani who hold the American passport, they will show the American passport to everyone. Right? Because they're so proud to be American. You get the point I'm trying to make? Alright? But this is actually a symptom of any Muslim countries. But all young people, we want to migrate. But when it shows the success of a civilization when young people want to stay and to do business and to do entrepreneurship. Okay? Because if you just take money from salary, you're never going to become rich. I never heard any person who become rich, from the salary. I've been working for 30 years in my life. Still, I'm paying my mortgage. Right? Still, I'm paying my mortgage. Just to let you know that from salary, it's not easy. Only from business, you can actually become richer. Then you can transfer the rich to the intergeneration. So having young people is actually what? Very important. So why am I talking like this? Because the future of Islamic finance is not only depends on the wealth accumulation, but the future of Islamic finance actually depends on what? This one, social finance. And the success of social finance will only happen when you are pushing for digital finance. And obviously supporting the sustainable agenda. I think this is very critical. We have to accept the fact that the third pillar of Islamic finance, which is zakat and also wakaf, are very critical for the success of Islamic finance. Because why is that the case? Because the first pillar is always the government. If you have a strong government, alhamdulillah. Alright? If you have a weak government, it's a big challenge. In fact, very challenging. But normally the weak government can be supported by the second pillar. What is the second pillar? The private sector. Okay? And in Bangladesh, I think the private sector is a bit more robust. Creating more jobs. Am I right or not? Much more entrepreneur, exporting a lot. So the private sector is a lot. But what creates the balance in terms of making people more inclusive is actually the third sector, which is zakat and wakaf. So the future of Islamic finance is supposed to be combining these 3 pillars. Alright? And Sukuk is actually a best example that you can combine these 3 pillars. Let me give you an example. During COVID, Malaysian government issued one Sukuk called Sukuk Prihatin. So Prihatin is a Malay word. So let me translate in English. Empathy Sukuk. Okay? Empathy Sukuk. And why they issue this Sukuk? Because they want people to donate. Purely donation. Purely donation is actually like a wakaf Sukuk. Purely donation. And Malaysian government raised money to help people during COVID. Okay? And it was oversubscribed. So you may ask, why people want to donate? Because you have to understand human nature. Human nature is always supportive of doing good. We always want to actually what? Help. Okay? And Sukuk is become an instrument for the government to issue this. Okay? So what are the technology which is required for us to push Sukuk forward? Number 1, Takatek. Okay, not Bangladeshi Taka, but Takatek. Alright? Takatek stands for Takaful technology. Alright? And to be surprising, Takaful is actually one of the most amazing product in Islamic finance. Alright? Because it gives you security protections. But unfortunately, even in Malaysia, we don't have agriculture Takaful product. We don't have. Surprisingly. Everyone talk about food security. Am I right or not? Everybody talk about food security. Especially in the Muslim world, food security is very important. Right? Because we eat a lot. Right? We eat a lot. Wedding we eat, every time we eat. Okay? Food is very important to us. But Muslim country does not have food security. And why we don't have a food security? For very simple reason, because we don't protect our farmers. And surprisingly, even in Malaysia, the farmers are still poor. They provide food for everyone else, but they remain poor. How is that possible? Because we don't have enough financial instrument for the farmers. And this is another thing that we need to also consider. Okay? Second thing is that Zakat technology. Everybody knows about this. The amount of zakat that we can pay every year in the Muslim world is about $1 trillion US. Everyone knows. That's how much wealth that we have in the Muslim world. You know, I live in Qatar for 4 years. The amount of wealth in the Muslim world is unimaginable. So we are so lucky because we got a lot of young people working in this in our country. And we are grateful for that because not easy to find young people to work in a very difficult sector, especially like a construction. You know, Malaysia is a very hot country. Very hot. And yet you can see these people working extremely hard, building all the mega skyscrapers and everything in Malaysia. And thanks to your talent as well. So that's why for me, whenever I want to see the future of any country, I will ask these two questions. And these two questions I think you also have to ask. Does your young people want to be in your country or not? I think that's very important. Right? Right? If the question is yes, then the future is very good. But if your young people is just want to move up, then this is actually one challenge. But what is the connection between this story and Sukuk? That means in order for you to give a future for the young country, you need to have huge amount of investment. And for huge amount of investment, you need basically what? Huge amount of funding. And that funding will actually come from the Muslim world as well, because we are actually flush with liquidity. The Middle East, they are flush with liquidity. Alright? And I think they're just eyeing for good investment. And that is actually has to be tapped by the countries like Malaysia and Bangladesh and so on and so forth. So, I just want to show you this picture. The reason being is that this is the second tallest building in the world, okay, which is recently been completed. It's a Maybank Tower. I'm sure you probably know Maybank. Maybank is the largest bank in Malaysia, alright, and it's actually built by PNB, Permodalan Nasional Berhad, our second largest wealth fund, which is about 300-400 billion Malaysian ringgit, it's about $100 billion US. And and they own Maybank, so Maybank is occupying that building. And then that is our beautiful Putrajaya, which is the capital of Malaysia. Alright. Of course, I'm showing all the good side of Malaysia. Alright, they also not so good side, but okay. But let me bring you the journey of Malaysia, right? Okay. You see, when we started, the first Sukuk in 1992 was only 125 million ringgit. Very small amount. It started in 1992. But if you look at all the other projects, we built 𝐾𝐿IA, the international airport, 4.4 billion using Islamic bond. Okay, we build our power plant. Everybody will use electricity. Am I right? Right? So Sukuk is probably the best because you can use Sukuk for construction under istisna. Then after that, you can combine with ijara or you can do just forward ijara. Okay, very simple. And by the way, structure doesn't really matter because in Sukuk you can do whatever structure. You can ask Mufti, alright? You can use whatever structure. End of the day, what matters is that you get the financing. Alright? And we want Sukuk to be long term. Why is that the case? Because if you do short term, there's no liquidity. People will just buy and hold. And the problem with buy and hold is that the pricing mechanism will become very difficult. Alright? But if you do long term and combination of a short term and long term, then the pricing mechanism become what? A lot more easier because of the liquidity. Okay? And liquidity should not just be created by the bank. You don't want to issue Sukuk only because the bank purchased. Okay? And that is also a problem. Okay? You want the mutual fund to purchase also. Okay, and that's very important because money should not be just centered on the banking, because we want to move also from banking to the capital market, because then only you have a balance. Because the problem in many countries, especially the Muslim country, most money in the bank, and when one bank got a problem, then you got a bank run. Okay, but if you have a capital market, then you're going to have a balance between capital market, because most of the papers will be actually held by the mutual fund as well. And mutual fund, all of you know, will give you better return as compared to the banking. I'm not trying to discount bank. Bank is very important. But to create value, you need to have a strong mutual fund. And mutual fund need this kind of papers. Okay. And some of you might, I just want to explain this exchangeable Sukuk. This is a very interesting story as well. Khazanah, which is also one of our sovereign wealth fund, when they want to issue Sukuk, because they are purely wants to do equity based, so what they have done is that they just didn't go for normal typical debt based Sukuk. They want to go for equity based Sukuk. So what was the underlying asset? The underlying asset was the shares of one of the company, which is Telekom Malaysia. Telekom Malaysia is basically our mobile provider. Alright?
Like ETC.
Yeah, like ATC and everything. So they use the underlying shares as the underlying asset. And then at maturity, you have the option whether you want to convert your Sukuk into the equity or not. So this is an innovation for you to move away only from the debt base. Alright? And this is done because the managing director of Khazanah at that time, currently the chairman of INSEAD, because he said, I want to do purely equity financing. Alright? So why am I telling you this? Whether we want to push Sukuk or equity, it always depends on the character. I think character is very important. That's why you need more people who actually are very excited about Sukuk. Okay, I have about another 10 minutes. So let me just continue.
So what are the underlying asset against sovereign Sukuk?
Which one?
Underlying asset against Malaysian sovereign Sukuk. Underlying asset.
This one?
Malaysian sovereign Sukuk.
Oh, this one.
Yes.
This one, basically Malaysian government used the underlying asset like the land. I told you, right, when we actually started with the land. Alright, and then after that, we move away to some of them intangible assets.
External rental.
Yeah, rental, yes. But now, most of them are just doing commodity murabah. I think because the scholar, when they allow tawarruk, then most people say, okay, tawarruk is amazing. We don't really need to have, big underlying asset. We can just use this commodity and everything, just do buying and selling. So that's why scholar also must be understand the fact that although tawarruk is allowed, but tawarruk is only a simple way, but eventually you need to push away from tawarruk and go into more real asset. Because the moment you allow tawarruk, this is what will happen. From asset back will become asset based, then it become no asset. This is also the danger also. And this is happening in Islamic finance in Malaysia. Alright, I hope in Bangladesh, the Mufti will become a bit more conservative. Of course, you can allow, do you allow tawarruk here? No tawarruk, okay, good. Alright, I'm not against tawarruk. Okay, I'm not against tawarruk. Tawarruk is basically what we call as the simple solution, allow you to achieve your objective. But if you got addicted with tawarruk, then it's a problem. Okay, that means you will not have desire to push Islamic finance to the next level. But since you don't have tawarruk, then it's also a good thing as well, because you will also push basically for asset base and asset. Now, because the scholar allowed the tawarruk, now the problem is that, but this one, the first 600 million, I think this is year 2002, this is where they use the land as the underlying asset. But the only difference was this one is that they purchase the land at the same face value, which means they do want to allow them to purchase at the same value. Although if you do real Sukuk, that means the purchase of the asset must happen at the
Market.
And this is where the ALFI Rule 62, right? When we come in place, then Malaysia will have problem. Okay, Malaysia will have big problem because all the asset has to be purchased under the. So what we worry is that the moment we will purchase the asset at the real price, then the people who issue Sukuk will not give you the good asset. They will only give the. You get the point or not? Okay, the bad asset. This is what I have a problem with Islamic finance. Upside, you want to keep. Losses, you want to privatize. This is where the trust and also the Shariah scholar will play a very big role. You see, Shariah scholar is very important. Okay, very, very important. We trust them. Okay, but they should always act in the interest of the stakeholders. Okay, not only per the sake of the act of the interest of the bank or the company. Okay, that's why Shariah scholar must always be independent, not actually just be just not only making business decision, but they also have to protect the integrity of Shariah as well. Okay, it's easier for me to say. I know it's difficult, Dr. Yusuf Sultan. I know it's very difficult. You have the challenge of finding a balance between the stakeholders. But if you don't trust the Shariah scholar, who else we can trust? Because trust is the most important thing in Islamic finance. Agree or not? For example, the young people who went to Venice, and then took the product and sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, is only based on trust. Yes or no? So if you don't have trust, then nothing happens. Okay. Here, I want to tell you a very interesting story. Of course, I put one MDP as well, alright? Just to tell you, this is also there's also bad story about Sukuk, right? Not all stories are there. But I want to tell you something very exciting. We did the entire MRT project. The entire MRT project. You know, Malaysia got 3 MRT, right? MRT 1, MRT 2, and now we are building MRT 3 metro. Purely using Sukuk. Purely using Sukuk. Okay? And it's all fully subscribed. And why it was fully subscribed? Because there's a guarantee from the So government guarantee for a long-term project, I think is a very critical for the success of. Okay, and you have to remember, MRT project cash flow wise is not profitable. Okay, it's not profitable because government has to basically fund. Okay, so how do you measure the profit of an MRT project? Number one, how much you save from the traffic jam. Because you have to remember, traffic jam is very costly. Yeah. Very costly. If you get stuck 1 hour in your traffic, you calculate your productivity, you multiply, let's say, for 60 million people of Bangladeshi people are working, then you will calculate the cost of 1 hour traffic. Yes or no? So you need to include that in calculation. Number two, you need to calculate the environment cost of the pollution from all these from the cars that are on the road. Okay. Number three, you need to calculate the respiratory disease that you are actually facing because of the pollution. Yes or no?
Yes.
All right. Because you trust me, I'm sure in Bangladesh the respiratory disease is very high. Asthma, am I right or not?
Yes.
Then you take MC. MC also a cost to the company. Yes or no? And then you bring children to hospital, also cost. You know, all these things are actually cost. So you cannot just calculate the MRT project, oh, how much money we're going to collect from the fees. Cannot. Yeah, exactly. There's so many costs. So if you do your calculation based on, okay, traffic jam, we reduce this much, pollution, we reduce this much, environment sustainability, we reduce this much and everything, then you realize that MRT project is actually viable. And it only become viable if there is a guarantee from the government. And today, because Malaysia is a high saving rate country, I'm sure in Bangladesh also people save a lot. We generally save what, 30 to 40%. Because mandatory, we must save 1/3 from our EPF, Employment Provident Fund. You have something like that in Bangladesh? Yeah.
Not mandatory.
Not mandatory. Okay. For us, it's mandatory. So whatever salary we get, 1/3 goes to our EPF. So our saving is very high. So when your saving is very high, the country is flush with liquidity. Okay, and you know that in Malaysia, 97% of our debt is financed locally. Only 3% from international. And even that, we still have a lot more liquidity. So we can actually buy more and more papers. So what the government is doing, government is using all this liquidity to finance all these long-term projects. So all these projects that you see in Malaysia right now is all funded by Sukuk. Okay. And the last one I want to say is this project, Tadau Energy Green Sukuk. The reason why I'm mentioning this project because this was the first green Sukuk in Malaysia. Okay. And now we want to invest more carbon credit projects. Okay. Why carbon credit project is very important? Because in the future, you can sell your carbon credit to Europe. Europe is not able to fulfill the carbon emission, so they need to buy the carbon credit. Okay, and of course, I'm not sure how relevant this thing to you in but to Malaysia, this is so relevant because we are going to meet the carbon emission easily compared to other countries. Why is that the case? Because 60% of Malaysia is still forest. Okay. And 70% of the carbon emission in Malaysia is contributed by 2 sectors. Number 1 is the energy sector, number 2 is the transportation sector. So transportation is very easy. You move everybody to EV. And can you do that? Yes, China has done it. You go Delhi, pollution. You go Delhi or Lahore, all pollution. But you go Beijing, clean air. I just went to Beijing this year. All electric car, clean air. No sound of the car. honking yes, but no sound of the engine. So it's basically have contributed tremendously to the transformation of Beijing. Okay, energy. Let me tell you a very interesting fact about energy. Solar panel today is 30% cheaper than fossil. And this is a fact. So what does it mean? Middle East is trembling now. Middle East is trembling now. And now all buildings should have solar panel. Because if you want to reduce your energy bill, the only thing to do now is basically what? Solar panel. Solar technology is so advanced now that you can actually generate more electricity as compared to fossil. Is it important for a country like Bangladesh? It's very important because you always have a current account deficit for only importing energy. Yes or no?
Yes.
The moment you become energy independent, your current account deficit problem will disappear. Yes or no? So this is where you can issue Sukuk for your solar panel project. And the moment you comply to international rating, I think there's going to be a lot of investment coming out from the international agencies as well. So in a nutshell, okay, I can basically tell you one example before I can conclude. Alright? So that's because this is a technical session. Let me just go through one example of a case study that you may want to consider in Bangladesh. We tried this thing in Malaysia, but we didn't get enough buy-in because the government's still afraid of doing equity resharing. So maybe you can try these things, okay? So let's say you want to build a project, a big metro project, and you want to issue Sukuk, okay? So what can you do? It's actually quite simple, right? You can create a SPV, a combination of three parties, okay? Investors, they can put the money, we call it as the Musyarakah Sukuk. Government can give the land, okay? Government can give the land. And contractor can also put the project financing, okay? Some money they can give themselves as their capital. The rest of the money they can generate from investors. So this is an example of a Musyarakah. It doesn't happen, but this is an ideal scenario. Okay, why it doesn't happen? Because government generally doesn't want to get into the risk business. Okay, they want to always transfer the business to the concessionaire, all right, to the third party or to the private sector. But this can be done, all right. Even you decided not to have the government, you can remove the government, but you can still have an agreement between the contractor or the developer and also the investors. Okay. So what can be done? During basically once the project is completed, okay? Once projected is completed. So this is basically during constructions. So during constructions, investors may not receive any return possible, but investor can also generate return from the future cash flows. So it means that you raise more money and you start distributing during the construction period as well. Or you can simply do what we call as a combination of a musyarakah and istisna, which doesn't allow you to basically pay the return during the construction. Okay. But once the project is generating revenue, what can you do is that you can actually start using the proceeds to pay the dividend to the investors. Okay. But this has to be make sure that the project is actually viable on the behalf from the investor's point of view. And this is actually quite relevant in the context of Bangladesh. Why is that the case? Because think about it. I think whatever you do is going to be profitable because you have the people. I look at your metro line. I always go at a country, I look at the metro line. It's so crowded. Right? It's so crowded. Right? And you can actually make viable. In Malaysia, for example, you know how much we pay for metro? 1 month is only 50 ringgit for 1 month. It's so cheap.
Yeah, very cheap.
Very cheap. You can ask Dr. Yusof Sultan. It's only 50 ringgit 1 month. You can use any. Unlimited. We got 3 metro line, we got 3 LRT line, and all the buses. Only 50 ringgit. Okay, that's why if people complain about public transport in Malaysia, there's something wrong with that. Only 50 ringgit. 50 ringgit is about how much in Taka? It's about 1,500. Yeah, 1,500 Taka. 1 month. Your entire transportation problem, if you don't have a car and everything, all your problem is actually basically what? Solved.
Unbelievable.
Alright? Unbelievable, right? And this is because of the Sukuk. Why is that the case? Because Sukuk allowed the Malaysian government to do the project for 30 years financing. Okay, 30 years pregnancy. Because only Sukuk can actually do this. Okay, the trust that we have in Sukuk is so immense. The government can do whatever they want, and the liquidity coming from where? The pension fund. The liquidity coming from long-term saving. So when you have good long-term saving, especially when the young people are saving, they're going to live for 30 more years, they will not withdraw the money. That's why the country will always grow when the young people decided to stay. And I think you have the highest percentage of young people. Alright? And I'm sure, you can do much more. So you can pay the dividend. Alright? And then at maturity, you can actually convert the Sukuk into shares. Okay? So that means the investor will become the owner of the metro company. Alright? Very simple. There's no rocket science behind this. But imagine how much problem that you can solve, the traffic problem. How many metro lines that you can build? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And who owns this metro line? The people. That's the beauty of it. So when they take the metro line, they say, I'm the owner of this metro line. You get the point I'm trying to make? So the ownership belongs to who? To the people. So if there's a demonstration, they will not destroy the metro line. You know why? Because it belongs to them. You think about it, right? So this, whatever they have investment in their country, this is actually what belongs to them. I'm sure some of you travel to Malaysia a lot. You probably know in Malaysia we have a lot of toll highway, right? But I also pay a lot of toll. But I'm not angry. You know why or not? Because I will get the dividend at the year. So whatever I'm paying, I'm getting back. I'm getting a good road, then I get back my money. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? The mindset. You get the point or not? The mindset. So let me end the story by telling you this. Maybe I can take 5 minutes of asking a question and answer. In Singapore, I'm sure you all love Singapore. All your money are also in Singapore, by the way. So maybe you go to Singapore today, you can say, give me 1/3 of Singapore belong to you. Alright? Maybe, I don't know. Only your money. I think the rest of the world money are there. Alright? Singapore, the famous leader of Singapore, say Lee Kuan Yew. I'm sure you know him, right?
Malaysia.
Yeah. And also he's famously said this, and let me end my presentation by saying this. He famously said this. He said, if I want my people to fight for my country, I need to give them something. Right? So what policy he did? He made sure that every Singaporean own one house. Right? Own one house. HDB policy. Right? Housing development policy. So he said, my people might not fight for my country, but they will definitely fight for their own house. Correct or not? Right? And that was the policy that have transformed Singapore. Why? Because every Singaporean have something in their own country. So the young people decided to stay. Right? So sometimes you're confused. What exactly that this guy is trying to say? Let me tell you what I'm trying to say. And let me conclude by saying, Sukuk is a wonderful innovation. If you use it properly, you can achieve any government objective with Sukuk. And I don't think that your country is having problem with saving. I think there are a lot of saving in banking sector. Yes or no? Yes. A lot of saving in banking sector. Alright? That's number 1. I don't think that your country is having problem with young people. There are a lot of young people. Imagine all your young people come back. So it's going to be even more. I went to Spain. The traders were Bangladeshi. I went to Italy. The traders were also Bangladeshi. I went to Oman. The traders also Bangladeshi. Right? So entrepreneur in nature. Yes or no? So entrepreneur in nature. So hardworking. There's a famous story in Malaysia. There was one Bangladeshi. There's a very famous story. He worked as a cleaner. He didn't take a single day off except Hari Raya or Eid. There's a famous story, right? And then he have educated his children. One become judge, one become doctor. So this is all amazing story. You get the point I'm trying to make?
So our country is enjoying the demographic dividend.
Exactly.
So young people in the force.
Yeah.
More young people.
And you're absolutely right. And let me tell you the beauty of it. Only Muslim world is growing in terms of population.
Yes.
We are still maintaining the family values. This is very important. You get the point or not? This is very important. Other countries in the world, the population is basically what? It's going down. What does it mean? It means that there's going to be less young people. So the next 20 years belong to us. Right? That's what I'm trying to say. Okay? So with that, I think I would end, because I can go on and on and on, which is not important because we have another session. So my conclusion is, please take into consideration the power of Sukuk. Alhamdulillah, Malaysia is a classic example where we have transformed the entire infrastructure project from power plant to metro, and now we want to use Sukuk to build hospitals. We want to, by the way, the latest hospital, the private hospital, we are issuing Sukuk. And it's a wakaf Sukuk. It's a wakaf Sukuk, by the way, it's a wakaf Sukuk.
Can you explain that a bit, Prof?
Oh, you want to hear the wakaf Sukuk in a bit? Okay, let me tell you how the wakaf Sukuk works. You just invest for a period of 10 years. You don't take any return. That means you give up the principal for a certain period of time. The return, you just reinvest with the hospitals, alright? After 10 years, you can get the money back. Okay, this is what we call as a temporary wakaf. But even you decided you don't want the money back, you can just give the money for perpetual. And you'll be surprised. Oh, you might think, oh, who wants to do this? Who wants to give money for wakaf, sukuk and everything? Trust me. The good thing about Muslim people is that they think about this world, and at a certain point of time, they will start thinking about the here. Right? And when that happens, all their money, they don't care. They just want to give it for the right reasons. And why we are using wakaf money for hospitals? Because we have enough masjid. Too many masjid. I'm sure in Bangladesh also same thing.
Yes.
Right? It's only full during Ramadan and Friday prayers. You go Middle East, full of masjid. Yes or no?
Yes.
But we need more hospitals. We need more schools.
Yes.
Private school, top class schools. And this can only happen from what? Wakaf. And people are giving it. You'll be surprised, people are giving it. In Malaysia, we have one company called Wakaf Anu. Right, let me tell you, all money is generated from wakaf. They provide free dialysis, free health check for eye and everything. And this is significantly helping the Muslims. And guess what? Also non-Muslims. Non-Muslims are also going to wakaf hospitals. And what is the best da'wah? When people are sick, you do da'wah. Am I right or not? Because when they are at the lowest point, you do da'wah. You don't do da'wah when they are at the highest point. So when they are happy, religion becomes second. But when they are sick, then they will remember, oh, I'm about to die. Right? So I have to be closer. So that is the best da'wah. That's why in Malaysia right now, we are pushing the idea of wakaf hospitals. Private wakaf hospital, not government. Private wakaf hospitals. And people are giving money for that. And I hope you all can consider these ideas, inshallah. And we can talk more in 1 hour how much I can basically. Maybe you can come to INSEF to learn. A promotion. Promotion. That there is the future in Sukuk. If you do properly, the Sukuk market will grow, and Malaysia, Bangladesh, and everything will continue. And Bangladesh is the closest to ASEAN. I think you probably know ASEAN will become the 4th largest economy in the world. Right? You are the closest to ASEAN, by the way.
So we are going to be member. We are supposed to be a member of ASEAN.
Yeah. So you are ASEAN plus. You be the ASEAN plus. You are the closest, by the way, to ASEAN, Myanmar and everything, and you are also the closest to China. So China plus ASEAN will become one of the largest growing economy. ASEAN will be number 4 largest. Okay? And ASEAN got 700 million people. So I hope you really take your this argument very seriously and look east, look to this part of the world, and inshallah promote Sukuk, because only when you guys are the captain of the leaders of the industry, sympathetic about Sukuk, then only the Sukuk can actually move forward. Don't worry about the technical side. The technical side is very advanced. Okay, and you can just replicate. Just come to Malaysia, replicate, or you go to Bahrain, or just replicate. It's all replication. The technology is actually there, the concept is actually there. The question is that whether you want to do it or not. So with that, thank you so much. Maybe I take 1 or 2 questions. Yes.
So I want to share with you one point that's important for us. That is, the geopolitics in South Asia is going to change, and in that, the China, Pakistan, Malaysia, these countries are going to rule or to be important in socio-economic development of the countries. So it is a good thing for us. So this will be an opportunity for us to explore new avenues for investment and for other works. So this is an opportunity. As you know, recent some events, geopolitical events in the region have totally changed the landscape, and we are hopeful that we are going to be benefited by the change. That is China, Pak, and Malaysia. These countries are going to lead the South Asia. So thank you very much.
No, you're absolutely right. Because even Malaysia today, we don't speak about Malaysia anymore. We speak about ASEAN. ASEAN got 700 million people. Indonesia alone got 280 million people. Now ASEAN already plus China, plus Korea, plus Japan, and we already have ASEAN plus GCC, and we also have ASEAN plus India as well. Alright, 6 countries. So I think if Bangladesh is also looking more towards ASEAN, I think there's going to be a greater synergy. And let's not forget, Dhaka to Kuala Lumpur is only 3.5 hours. And there's actually 10 flights per day. So doing business is actually very easy. Because the Malaysian Airlines, when they fly to Dhaka, the stewardess and the pilot doesn't go up, they come back. So what does it mean? It means that moving from Dhaka to Kuala Lumpur is actually become very, very easy. And there's a big project that's going to happen, the train between Kuala Lumpur all the way to China. Alright? And then once Myanmar becomes stable, right, inshallah they will become stable because they cannot have conflict forever in their life. Right? So I think the trade value between this part of the region will become very, very critical. So that's why Bangladesh is always on our radar, not just because we are getting the labor from Bangladesh. That's the easy part. You get the point I'm trying to make. We are actually looking at much more than that, and we know that you are under 80 million people now and your population is growing. It's just a matter of time before you're going to exceed 200 million. When I first went to Pakistan, 2016, the population was 200 million. Now in 10 years, the population have gone up to 240 million. So there's a 40 million increase in the last 10 years. And I'm sure the same thing will happen to Bangladesh as well. Yes, we have another question, maybe the final one.
I am Hafizur Rahman, Shariah Auditor, City Islamic. I have a question about asset-backed and asset-based sukuk. There is many opinion to brief this terminology, but I want to know what is different between asset-backed and asset-based sukuk. You are requested to brief with an example or case study, please. Thank you.
Very simple. You probably have to understand is that when you have asset, you have two kinds of type of asset. First is the legal part. The second one is actually the beneficial part. Okay. So if you do asset back, that means you need to transfer the legal ownership and also the beneficial ownership. So let me give you an example. Let's say Citibank wants to issue Sukuk and they want to do asset back. So that means they must have to transfer this building to the investors. And at the maturity, they need to buy back this building at the face value. So who owns the assets? It's actually the investors. Right? But if you do asset based, you only transfer the beneficial ownership. The legal ownership still remains with the Citibank. But the rental that generated by this building, which is the benefit of using this building, will in the form of rental. So that ownership belongs to the investors. Alright? So that is the fundamental difference. So you need to understand is that transferring legal ownership means you transfer everything. Transferring usual fraud or the beneficial ownership means that whatever benefit that you get from the asset belong to the investors. Alright? So why asset base is so popular? Because you don't have to go through all this legal to transfer and then transfer back. Alright? You only have to say, okay, now we give you the beneficial ownership. The rental that we generate will become the dividend for the investors. So asset base is much more convenient, much more simpler, much more faster as compared to asset back. Some of you say, oh, this is not pure Islamic. We try this thing in Malaysia. Nobody wants to do asset back. And the worst part is, okay, you don't want us to do asset back, we will go to conventional bond. You get the point I'm trying to make? No? So rather than they going to conventional bond, at least they do asset-based sukuk. And it's acceptable among the Shariah scholars anyway. It's not that we are doing something which is not acceptable. It's acceptable anyway. It's not perfect, but this is the best solution that we have. Okay, timing wise, we okay? Okay, one question, yes, from Central Bank, yes.
Yes, I am Aisha Ayub, Joint Director of Bangladesh Bank, working in the SPB. Thank you for giving us the overview of the Malaysian Sukuk market. Just I want to know that you said that the MRT Sukuk, government is giving the guarantee. Is the originator who is the originator
So
in that
who,
case?
okay,
Is the government is the originator or
Okay.
originator is the same?
okay,
Because we are going to
to build also more metro line.
yes, and there is lots of criticism, and we are going forward with this.
Okay.
That's what I want to know from you. Thank you.
First, you can take me as your consultant, but anyway, applying for job. No,
Yes, we will like.
Yeah, I'm just joking. So government of Malaysia, under the Ministry of Finance, so our Ministry of Finance, they allow to establish company under Ministry of Finance. So MRT Corp is one of the company that was established under the Ministry of Finance. Right? So the MRT Corp is actually the originator. But because it's a government owned, not many people will buy the Sukuk issued by MRT Corp because they know government project, MRT project, they not make enough cash flow, right? So in order for people to buy the MRT Sukuk, government has to give guarantee. With the guarantee, they don't have to issue at a corporate rate, but they can actually issue at a much more lower yield rate. Okay, and so that is and that's how majority of the government projects actually being done. All right, so all actually being issued by the company under the Ministry of Finance. For example, Tenaga Nasional, our electricity company. Although it's been private, but majority of the shares is also owned by Khazanah. Khazanah is also the sovereign wealth fund which is established by the government. So government only give guarantee to the company which is related to them.
I want to know another thing. Do you have any institution any third party guarantee arrangement in your country?
Yeah, we have what we call as Dana Jamin. So Dana Jamin is basically also agency which is created by the government in order to guarantee in the case that the originator also default. So it's just like an insurance. It's like in the conventional finance we call it as an option. All right. So we have a third party called Dana Jamin. All right. For SMEs also we have another third party to guarantee the loan. For the big loan, like what you say, we also have a third party as well. Because this is very important. Without having all this ecosystem, you're never gonna basically have trust. And all these things, by the way, were established by the government. Okay, I can give you more detail. Okay, how it works and everything. Okay, there are more questions. I thought the time is running out.
You can run like 15 minutes at least, inshallah, if you're okay.
Okay, yeah, I have to.
Can I just?
Then I have to get a job in Bangladesh.
No, inshallah.
Maybe opportunity.
No, I'm just joking.
I just
Brother
want-
Yusuf is very close and dear. In fact, I'm here because of him also. Inshallah. Yeah.
So, Prof, just to add a follow-up to that question. So basically, the main question here is that how Malaysian government has the ecosystem for the sovereign sukuk. For example, the SPV, trustee, is this under the same entity, or as you mentioned, there are different entities set up by the government of India. So if you can share a bit about this structure, perhaps we can replicate that or have that in Bangladesh.
You see, you need to understand is that in the context of Malaysia, there are two instruments that the government issues. One is they also issue government papers called MGS, Malaysian Government Securities. Right? So Malaysian government securities can be conventional and also can be Islamic. Right? There's no issue about it. So these kind of securities was issued directly by the central bank. Okay, and this is purely for liquidity management, for whatever funding gap and so on and so forth. That's number one. Right? Number two, Malaysian government also issue sukuk like the way I said just now, through like a new company, MRT and so on and so forth. But they don't like say they the one who issue sukuk, but they provide basically what? Guarantee. Alright, so this means that the government debt has two kind of debt or government. One is direct borrowing from the people using the Malaysian government securities. The second one is that indirect borrowing by giving guarantee to the company which is established by the Malaysian government. Alright, but in order for them to do this, you need to have the complete ecosystem, which is the guarantee scheme, which I said just now, Dana Jamin. We also have the rating mechanism, which is by MRC, Mark, and also Rating Agency of Malaysia. We must also have a trustee mechanism, Alright, so the trustee is actually to protect the right of the investors and so on and so forth. So to answer your question is that if you want to have a robust ecosystem, that means you need to establish all these institutions. And Malaysia did it because the government wants to do it. And trust me, Sukuk will never become successful if the government doesn't want to. So the government is very critical when it comes to the success of the Sukuk and the real projects. Okay, people must see the real projects. Okay, and the good thing about Malaysia is that I show you the tall building. Alright, that's also raised. So they can see, oh, okay, now we have this. Now we have this MRT. Now we have this, solar panel project. Now we have this power plant. So they need to see all these things are happening. Then only people will trust the system. But if you just take the money from the people, but nothing happens, then it's also very difficult for you. So that's why it's very important when the first project that you use Sukuk, that project must be successful project. Then that must become the story that you use for all the rest of the projects. Look at our case. The first Sukuk was issued by Shell, and Shell is a multinational company. So when a multinational company issues Sukuk, it gives credibility to the whole thing. Right? I think that is actually very, very important. I cannot emphasize enough how important governance issue. And you know what is the good thing about Malaysia or not? Our inflation is one of the lowest in the world. We are only about 2%. Our currency volatility is also very stable. I think you all know that. Okay. Although our debt level is still increasing because of the government deficit, so on and so forth. But we are trying to bring down the deficit by using more equity-based Sukuk. So now we have more debt-based Sukuk, but we are now going more and more towards equity-based Sukuk. But inshallah, it will take time. But we are very sure that this is actually will happen. And then when the private sector actually become more and more involved now in Sukuk, now we are going to put less pressure on the government to undertake I think all these projects. So infrastructure is the key, and I think for Bangladesh, the infrastructure project is unlimited. You're going to build more airports for sure. You're going to build more port. You're going to build more roads. Am I right? Not. You're going to build more metro. It's a big country. It's a big country. Right, 180 million. I mean, it's a small country, but big population and housing problem. You will resolve that and everything. And what is the best thing to solve all these problems? It's just funding, and funding is the best is to use Sukuk. So just to answer your question, sister, you need to invest in the ecosystem, and you need to put the right people heading the ecosystem. Just to add one more thing, the other thing that you need to develop that what Malaysia did is the DFI, Development Financial Institution. I don't know whether you have DFI in Bangladesh. Alright. So we need to have a robust DFI investment ecosystem, because only DFI can actually finance all these projects. So if I'm not mistaken, the first LRT project in Malaysia was fully funded by Bank Pembangunan or the Development Bank, and this is purely DFI because DFI doesn't take deposits. Alright, so they don't have to answer to deposit, so they can take more riskier projects. So, okay. Are we good? Now everyone is eating, that means I can finish my session? Okay, there are more questions. Okay, yeah. Please.
I was.
Yeah, go ahead, brother. Yeah. And then after that, you, and then we can end the session. Yeah.
Okay. My name is Hamzi. I work for IDLC Islamic. So I think my question would be to you and Dr. Yusuf Sultan together. Also, your Sukuk presentation. The bottom line to me was that you had to choose asset based due to its feasibility.
Yes.
So if we only consider feasibility the top priority, then there comes a question of Sharia compliance. And why I'm raising this question at this moment, because we think Islamic finance industry in Bangladesh is at a crossroad. Although we have started in this back in 1983. So a lot of non-compliances in terms of both this Sharia and governance has happened in the Islamic finance industry because I think in certain practices we were at the floor of Sharia compliance. For example, in case of Murabaha, we allowed paying to the making the disbursement to the client's account, making the agent. So After your presentation, which was focused on the Sukuk side, my question to both of you is that whether at this moment for Bangladesh, we should prioritize the feasibility. It's already a very robust and big industry in terms of Islamic banking and finance. So should we not focus more on the compliance side of the Sharia? That is my question to you as well as Dr. Mufti Sukuk. Thank you.
I will answer very shortly. I think compliance should be necessary but not a sufficient thing for Islamic banks. So they mean fulfilling compliance should be given. Alright? So that would be my answer. So which means that when you do Islamic finance, compliance should not be an issue. Right? So that which means that your Sharia governance framework must be very robust. Okay? So investing in Sharia governance, product disclosure, product document, Sharia audit, Sharia review and everything is actually very critical. Unfortunately, we are not investing enough in Sharia audit and also Sharia review. Okay? We just want to do Islamic finance, but the back support is actually very lacking. Okay? So I personally feel that if you don't have a robust Sharia review and also Sharia audit and Sharia compliance mechanism, it's very difficult for us to move to the next level.
I mean, what happens if my robust Sharia compliance framework doesn't allow me to operate with asset-based? They only focus for the asset-backed. What
Okay.
happens there?
I think this is where I think you need to look at the innovation that Bank Negara have started. They created a product disclosure for Daruriyat, Hajiyat, Tasniyat and everything. So and also you need to really look at the Maqasid framework as well. Because you cannot just look at the Sharia purely on what is permissible and what is not permissible. And the discussion of Sharia today is have gone beyond permissible and not permissible. You can ask Mufti Sultan. In Malaysia now, we are talking about Daruriyat, Hajiyat. Now we are bringing Maqasid framework. We are bringing Umum Balwa, impact framework and everything. So all this dimension of maslahah and everything is changing the way the Sharia scholars think as well. And that is also giving a lot more, input and make Sharia more innovative rather than just, right or wrong. Maybe Ustaz, you want to...
I think Prof has already responded to it. I just want to add one comment. It's always a collaboration between Sharia, business, legal and compliance. That's how I see it. Of course, from Sharia point of view, we will always advocate for the most idealistic approach. But we also need to understand the business concern of it. Like as Prof mentioned, if Malaysia did not consider that in the first place, it would not have been marketing. And people would just go for bond. That's what we see unfortunately in Bangladesh as well. That in many times, when we advocate for the most idealistic approach, people say, okay, I don't need it. And then just go for the conventional banking, conventional space. So that collaboration often in my experience is missing. And of course, for that collaboration, we also need to upskill ourselves. We need Sharia scholars who understands the business side of things. We need the business who understands the major Sharia concerns of Sharia. That's what Malaysia did. That's what I have been blessed. I was blessed to have been at INSEAD, that we had a blended approach. For Sharia, we had the opportunity to understand how corporate finance, accounting, international finance, these work. And from their perspective, they had the opportunity to understand usul fiqh. I still remember some of my colleagues, they had a hard time to memorize qiyas, ijma, because they never studied it, but they had to study it. What happened? They understand, okay, this is the major thing. So that collaboration, I think, Prof, I would have looked at. Thank you.
And I just want to conclude by saying, my friend is a Sharia scholar, he said, for Sharia scholar to say no, I think is very easy. You can say no to everything. But a good Sharia scholar will think beyond just saying no and, try to basically allow things to happen, and draw the line, where we should actually stop. And then that line is actually quite a dynamic line. And this is where the interpretation and also collaboration happens. And just to answer, another good thing about Malaysia is that out of 7 Sharia scholars who sit in the bank, you can have 2 coming from non-Sharia. Okay? I'm not sure about Bangladesh, right? But 2 can come from non-Sharia. So these 2 from non-Sharia, they give expertise from other point of view. Some people provide sustainability, some people from audit experience, some people from risk experience. So you have to combine the Sharia and also non-Sharia people. Because if you just leave it to Sharia people, the thinking will be one way. If you just leave it to business people, the thinking will be one way. So this is where collaboration effort taking place. I'm so sorry. I think, okay, the lady, okay, last one, she's been raising from, okay, go ahead, yeah. I don't want to disappoint you, okay. Last one, huh? Okay, okay.
Thank you so much. I had a question about equity-based sukuk.
Mm.
For equity-based sukuk, what happens at maturity? If the investors of sukuk can convert that into equity, then can equity-based sukuk be considered an exit strategy for the owners? Or what is the incentive for the owners to go for an equity-based sukuk if that is eventually diluting their ownership? So I want to be clarified about that.
Alright. That's my field, dilution and ownership and everything. That's what I study all my life. Okay, very easy for me to answer this. The motivation for equity-based sukuk is that you are giving them a stock option, hoping that the fundamental performance of the company will actually go up. So in the case of Khazanah, when they use Telecom Malaysia as the underlying shares, the only incentive for people to buy this thing is that, okay, there are two options. Number one, I can exit by taking my money out. Number two, if the performance of Telecom Malaysia will go up, then eventually I will actually own the shares will have a greater value. Because you have the right to buy the shares at a certain predetermined price, right? So automatically the moral hazard will actually come down. Okay, because end of the day, what happens is that you are now giving the ownership to the people, and the investors will only buy if there is a future upside of the company. So that means that you cannot use your bad assets, as the underlying shares. Because if you use the bad asset as the underlying shares, then if the company does not go up, then nobody will actually buy your next equity sukuk. Okay, so the pressure of performance is much more higher when it comes to equity as compared to. But when it comes to dilution of the things, Telecom Malaysia is not a private company. Telecom Malaysia is actually a private company established by the government. So it's okay to dilute the ownership. You get the point I'm trying to make? Because it's actually for the people. Okay, and this is actually very important for you to understand is that the country must belong to the people. Okay, so which means people means what? That means you get dividend. For example, myself, I invest in EPF, my provident fund. I also buy shares in PNV. I also buy shares in all the so-called potential with the government companies. So whatever happening in Malaysia, eventually I will get the return. Alright? So I'm very happy to pay something for my country. You get the point I'm trying to make? So that is the narrative that you use to convince people that, okay, why equity-based sukuk is actually good for you. Okay? So with that, I think thank you so much. I think enjoy your breakfast. I think I can see the apples is very tasty. Alright?